Thank you so much for being here during the lunch hour on a Wednesday. And we've got a very, very special presentation that we want to provide you. It's all about relationship violence prevention. And our guest speaker is Katie Hnida, who is definitely going to be sharing her story, and will also be sharing violence prevention tips, and we'll be talking about various resources that you can tap into and use as needed. Before we begin the presentation, though, I do want to thank all of the supporters of our program today, because we could not do it without our supporters. Our key supporter today is the Indiana-Purdue Student Government Association, so I really appreciate their support. I also would like to mention the Fort Wayne Women's Bureau, our IPFW Center for Women and Returning Adults, as well as our athletic department, 4 key sponsors to help support today's program. Well, our special guest is extremely, extremely special, and she, the past decade, has experienced things that has helped her feel empowered to share important messages for us to live by for a full life. Katie Hnida is one that is known for the 3 A's. She is an athlete. She is the very first athlete in NCAA Division I sports to play football. She is an author. She wrote the book Still Kicking. It's a #1 bestseller list book called Still Kicking, as well as she's an advocate. She is a very, very much an advocate, has a passion for sexual assault prevention. So let's go ahead and begin our program. And before Katie comes up, we're going to kick off our program with a video that will help you get to know Katie, and will lead right into her talk.
To start with the story of Katie Hnida. As an 18-year-old, she was dressed out in the black and gold of the CU Buffs. Dream come true. But it turned into a nightmare, which lasted years. And only now, at age 27, is Katie happy again to be in a helmet, shoulder pads, and kicking shoes, playing for the semi-pro Colorado Cobras in Aurora. And last night, she was back in the game.
And it's good. Field goal, number 10, Katie Hnida.
With that field goal last night against the prison guards from Florence, Katie Hnida made history again. The first female to ever score in a semi-pro football game.
For me, it doesn't even feel like it's historic at all anymore. I've been doing this for so long, and mostly it was just great to be out here, and the reaction of my teammates. These guys support me so much, and it's the most unbelievable thing. That's the best thing about being out here. Not making history, it's being out, having a team, getting to play ball again. Actually,
playing ball is all she ever wanted to do in the first place. As a walk-on at CU after a career at Chatfield, she suited up for the Buffs, but never played. Then 8 years ago, the worst year of her life. Katie says she was continuously sexually harassed and sexually assaulted by a Buffs teammate. She left the team, staying silent about the assault for nearly 4 years. She went on to play for New Mexico and became the first woman to score in a Division I game. Then in 2004, the nightmare came back, when then CU coach Gary Barnett answered Katie's charges against the football program.
It was obvious Katie was not very good. She was awful. Okay, and so, you know what guys do? They respect your ability. I mean, you could be 90 years old, but if you can go out and play, they respect you. Well, Katie was a girl. Not only was she a girl, she was terrible.
Katie was at her lowest point. She disappeared for a while, but then decided last year kicking was in her blood, and it wasn't going away. So she tried out for the Cobras.
I watched her on TV when she made history at the NCAA level in New Mexico. When she started on our team, I did some research, and I can't find any female that scored a point, much less field goals, in semi-professional football. So I believe she did make history tonight, and look forward to many more field goals by her.
Katie was back in the environment she missed as well. accepted as just another football player, regardless of gender.
You come out, you kick balls, you work out with the guys, and we have good guys on this team, and that's, you know, what it comes down to. We have good leadership in the coaches, and then we have good guys, and it's, you know, they're like a bunch of brothers. They really are, and that's, God, I mean, that's just the best thing in the world to have.
We were told by our coaches if anything happens to her, then we got to like come answer to them. So it's just a big protection on her, but she knows what to do. She can handle her own if she gets hit, so that's how she does it. It's wonderful. I mean, I have a blast with it. I mean, the great team chemistry and everything like that. So it's all about just being part of the team.
We were just arguing about who's got better hair, me and one of the guys with the longer hair. We have fun, and that's what the main thing is. We are a team, and we bond. We come out here and we, you know, work our butts off together, and it's a great thing. We're all in this together, and the team unity is fantastic on this team.
After the Cobras' victory, Katie shared an emotional hug with her boyfriend. She's finally playing again with nothing to hide, with no secrets, just playing for the love of the game.
All right, thank you so much. So there was a little bit of background on me, and I realized I should tell you that I am actually landed here in Fort Wayne because I played for the Firehawks, the arena team. Is anybody familiar with the arena team? I hope. I have been so surprised at how many people had no idea we were actually out there. And I'm happy to say that I did a little bit of semi-pro kicking here in Indiana too. So thank you guys for having me today. And I love to see that there are so many men in the audience too. It's terrific that we've got you guys out there, not only because this issue affects you guys as well, but because we need to realize that this is a societal issue, that this is not just a woman's issue. So thank you guys all for coming out. So there was a little bit of background on me up there, but I'd like to go a little bit further back to start my story with you. I am originally from Littleton, Colorado. I am the oldest of 4 kids. We were all athletes, so we were always out in the backyard doing something, whether we were shooting hoops or playing 2-on-2 soccer or God knows whatever else we could find, breaking windows, all that kind of stuff. And actually, soccer was my main sport until I was 13 years old, when one night in our backyard, my little brother and I, we were tossing around a football, and I found out that I could kick a football. And it was the most amazing feeling of my life. I had always loved football, but never thought that I would ever get the chance to play football, mainly because I was a girl. This was back in 1995, so there weren't so many females out on the field yet. There still aren't a ton, but I know that you guys, even here in Fort Wayne, I know a couple of the high schools have had girl kickers around. So it just so happened, though, that here I was, this 13-year-old little girl, and it turned out that my high school that I was going to be attending in the fall needed a kicker. So I thought, what the heck? I'm going to go do it. And I decided to go try out, and that was just the end of it. I guess, or actually, I should say it was the beginning of it. It was the most amazing thing that had ever happened in my life. The minute that I stepped out onto the football field, I knew that I had found exactly where I belonged. It was a perfect fit. Nothing had ever come so natural to me. Being an athlete, as much as I love to compete, I still had never found anything that was like kicking footballs. So I had a pretty successful high school career, and then had some interest coming in from colleges by my senior year. And most exciting for me, I was invited to walk on at our state university, the University of Colorado. I had grown up cheering for the Buffs, and it was literally like a dream come true to think about getting to suit out in the black and the gold. There had never been another woman who had actually played at the Division I college football level before, but it didn't seem like it was that big of a thing for me. It just kind of seemed like it was the next natural step in my athletic career. I thought it would be like high school, but only better. Unfortunately, I couldn't have been more wrong. The minute that I stepped out onto the field, The coach who had brought me into CU left, and under the new leadership, I walked into an environment where I was clearly not wanted. Players there would call me vulgar names that are unrepeatable up here. I would have footballs thrown at my head when I was trying to practice. And when we would gather together as a team in a huddle, I would be groped by different players. The worst came at the end of that year when I went to a teammate's house, a teammate who was one of the few who I thought I knew well and who I trusted. He was one of the few guys who I was friends with. I had even talked to him about what I was dealing with on the team, the guys who would harass me, the guys who would say terrible things. And he always would remind me, he'd say to me, you know, those guys are just a bunch of idiots. You're a strong woman. You can handle this. Don't listen to anything they're saying. And little did I know that that night, my entire life was going to change forever. The night started normally. We were sitting on the couch, watching a basketball game, and just kind of shooting the breeze, talking about how our conditioning session had been that morning, talking about Kobe Bryant and his jump shot, usual stuff. Suddenly, he slid over onto the couch and turned to me and said, "You look so pretty." And immediately, something kind of went off with me because I thought, oh, this is weird. We don't have that kind of relationship. It was very much a teammate-y, you know, brother-sister kind of relationship. So immediately, something in my body started to go off. And the next thing I knew, he started scooting closer and kissing my neck. I immediately protested and started to say, hey, you know, what are you doing? This isn't okay. You know how I feel about the whole teammate thing. I had a very strong rule about not dating or being involved with any of my teammates. And he shushed me, literally shushed me with his hand, and told me that it was okay. Told me that he wanted me, and that if I looked hard enough, I would know that I wanted him too. I immediately started protesting no then at that point, and he ignored me, proceeded to push me down further onto the couch, and then raped me. At that point, my entire body just shut down. I felt completely lifeless and disconnected. It was almost like I was standing over somebody else watching this happen to someone else. I was completely shocked. I was completely stuck until suddenly his cell phone rang. And to this day, I don't know why, he decided to get up and go answer his cell phone. So he gets up to go answer his cell phone, and suddenly my body, my instincts start crashing right back in. It's like, go, get up, move, get the hell out of here as fast as you can. So I stumbled up the stairs, jumped into my car, was so upset that I backed my car right into a pole, but I managed to get myself home and safe. When I got home, I was still very disoriented, very confused. I locked every single lock on my door, stumbled over my couch, and then sat there for hours. I couldn't figure out what had just happened. My body was in so much shock. And at some point, hours later, the questions really did start to come. They floated in and out of my head. Was I raped? What had just happened there? I couldn't have been raped. I knew this guy. This was someone that I was friends with. This was somebody that I even trusted. He was my friend. Rape was what happened when you were in a dark alley and a stranger came up and attacked you with a knife. It wasn't when you went over to one of your buddies' houses to watch a basketball game. They even had given us whistles. When we got to see you in the dorms, they would give us whistles, and those whistles were meant to keep us safe if we were attacked. So you bet I would carry my whistle around at night, especially if it was a bunch of girls walking around. But never once did I think about taking it over to a friend's house or having any idea where it was at that time. I didn't tell anybody what happened to me. Not only was I confused, but I felt so ashamed and dirty, and for some reason I felt completely responsible for what had happened. I had always been this strong, confident woman. I couldn't imagine myself being a victim of any kind, let alone a rape victim. It didn't seem to fit. And I never knew anybody who actually had been raped. They would talk about it on campus, or they talked to us about being safe, but I never actually knew anybody who had gone through it. So since I didn't know what to do, I thought, okay, I'm just going to ignore this, and I'm going to make this go away. Maybe if I just, I'm going to push it out, I can power on, I can keep on going, and it's just going to go away. Everything's going to be fine. And that, of course, did not work. Every single aspect of my life was touched by my rape, my health, my grades, my personality, my relationships, my spirit. I ended up not returning to the football team and left CU shortly after that. There really aren't any words to describe that next year of my life. It was a pure hell. I lived in a depression that was so deep that there were days that I literally functioned just enough to keep myself alive. I would not be able to sleep at night. I wouldn't want to get out of bed in the morning, but I wouldn't want to be sleeping during the day. I would spend hours just lying there, not doing anything, wondering what had happened to my life. If I ever did get any sleep, the nightmares started to crash in. I would awake, tossing my covers around and crying and hot and sweaty. And along with the nightmares came the anxiety. I was so fearful. I was fearful to be out, fearful to be meeting new people. I was scared. I was shaky and nauseous any time that I thought about CU, which seemed to be constant. My life felt like it had been completely blown apart, just shattered into a million tiny pieces. And then at some point, I cannot tell you exactly when or why, there was no giant big aha moment or anything that I can actually explain. I just decided that I needed to go get help. So I found a therapist, and I slowly started to begin to dig through all of the wreckage of what had happened those past few years. And it was hard. It was hard as hell. It was so painful, but I knew that I had to do it because I wanted to have my life back. I wanted to be a full person again. The best way to describe it is that it was kind of like having a surgery where you know that it's going to hurt, it's going to be painful, there's going to be a hell of a lot of rehab afterwards, but that if you don't get it, the disease is just going to keep on growing and growing. I finally started to feel like I was becoming a little more healthy again. I felt like I wanted my life back, and not only with my life, I wanted my dreams. I told my family and friends about my rape and abuse, and then I returned to school and also to my dream of playing college football, this time at the University of New Mexico. Now, New Mexico was so different from CU. It was like a night and day experience. The guys, not only did they accept having a woman on the team, but they embraced it. We had a lot of fun with having a girl on the team, and we did everything together. We would work out together, we'd eat together, we'd watch football together, we'd study together, we did everything. It was fantastic. It was like having 100 brand new brothers. And then in 2003, I was able to make it onto the field and achieve my dream of becoming the first woman to score in a Division I football game in our season opener. So that was a huge moment and a huge accomplishment for me. Now, despite the fact that I had such a great community in New Mexico and was on my way to healing further, there still were a lot of effects from my rape. With the support of my teammates and my coaches at New Mexico, I spoke out publicly about what happened at CU. And the public response, it was stunning. There's no other way to put it. While a lot of people were supportive, there was a huge group of people who attacked me and endlessly questioned me and said things like, if she had been raped, why didn't she go to the police? Why did she wait so long to talk about this? If she knew him, how could this have been a rape? And then, of course, you saw the response from my coach on the video that I opened with. And what struck me so deeply about these negative responses is that it really let me know where society was on this issue, that we really don't, most people, I would say, don't have a lot of knowledge about sexual assault, actually, and certainly nobody wants to talk about it. I know that we've got the posters out there that say, you know, ready to get uncomfortable, and in a way I know it is uncomfortable. This is not stuff that is fun to talk about. But on the other hand, I hope that when we're in here, we can make this a little more comfortable to talk about, to get this out there and just have it so we can talk about it, mostly because it's really, really, really important. When they asked me to come speak at IPFW about prevention, I thought about a lot of different things that I could talk about, a lot of different ways that you can try to protect yourself and this and that. And I really thought that the best thing for me to do was to share my own story, because unfortunately my story is very close to the norm, and the fact that it happened in college is something that is really important. I know you guys just filled out those little sheets, and it says that 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted while during their college careers. And I think I work a lot in this area. I think that's a conservative statistic. I think we're closer to 1 in 4, to be honest. And if you actually sit and think about that right here, the sheer numbers, that's phenomenal. We probably have maybe, just over 100 people in here. And if this were all women, 25 people in here would experience a rape or attempted sexual assault. It's mind-blowing. And it also means that everybody in here knows somebody who's been raped or sexually assaulted. The other thing is that these rapes, they're committed by people that we know. Mine was an acquaintance who was a friend. So often we do like to think that it's the dark stranger coming out of the dark alleyway and this and that, but it's just not the case. It's 80% of rapist perpetrators are someone that you know, someone that you see, someone that you talk to, someone maybe even that you're friends with. A lot of rapes are not reported to law enforcement. And as a survivor myself, I can understand why that is. I ended up reporting my own rape about 4 years after it happened, and it was only after I spoke out publicly. I know that there's so much shame and confusion and fear that comes after an assault, but it's really important for me to let you know that here there are some really great resources for if you are going to report a rape. Both IPFW and the Fort Wayne Police Department have specially trained investigators who will work with sexual assault victims to help get them the counseling and the treatment that they need. It's really, really important. And if you don't feel like you're ready to go to the police, I would ask you to go tell someone. It's really hard for me to step back and second guess would I have done anything differently after my assault. That is such a hard question. But there's one thing that I would have done differently is that I would have spoken up. I would have told someone. because it's one of those crimes where you feel so very alone, and you don't have to be alone. The resources are out there. You have help here at IPFW, you have the Women's Bureau, you have the Fort Wayne Sexual Assault Treatment Center, and all of these places you can go to are completely confidential, and they also will not push you to press charges. You simply can go there to get the help and the support that you need. Now, I know while I felt like sharing my own story was the best thing that I could do for you guys, I also know there are some practical tips for prevention that you probably have seen before, have been passed out, but let's go ahead and talk about them anyways. Things like when you are at home, going home, making sure that you lock all your doors and your windows, just really something practical and easy to keep yourself safe. Always being aware of your surroundings. Walk with people, stay in the light, use that IPFW escort service. Don't be afraid to do it. And I know that it's college, and I remember being a college student, and I know you guys are going to be going to parties. I know you're going to be drinking, but it's always really important that if you are going to be drinking, to just, do it as safely as possible. Don't leave the drinks unattended. Keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on your alcohol intake. And I'm really big on the buddy system. I think the buddy system is really, really important, that you make sure that you've got a friend who's there with you, who can keep an eye out for you, that you know that you've got each other's backs, that you can just make sure that everything is going okay, that the other person isn't getting put into any uncomfortable or bad, possibly dangerous situations. I actually spoke a week ago out in DC, and I heard a really interesting story from a college student who told me that what they did in their group of friends was they designated, instead of designating like a DD, a designated driver, they would do like a designated safe person. So they would have someone out of their group of friends that night who wasn't going to be drinking. Sometimes they would be the person driving, who would just kind of keep an eye, keep tabs, make sure that everybody was doing okay. And I thought that was a pretty decent idea. They'd kind of rotate around. So again, just make sure you're looking out for your friends and taking care of each other. It's really important. And the last thing is to listen to your gut feelings. That is so important to me because I know that my body started to react as soon as things were not right in that room with my rapist. Our bodies, they tell us things before we're even processing them consciously. If you feel uncomfortable or if you feel unsafe, there's usually a pretty good reason why. So definitely get yourself out of there. The last thing that I just want to reiterate is that if something does happen, please remember that you are not alone. There are tons of resources. IPFW has some really, really fantastic ones. I'm actually really impressed. I speak at a lot of different colleges and universities, and they have a very terrific put-together program and a lot of ways that you can get help in different ways. The help is out there, and remember, no matter what, a rape or an assault is never your fault. It doesn't matter if you were drinking, it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship with someone, it doesn't matter what you were wearing, it doesn't matter if you were making out beforehand. It's just no means no and stop means stop, and it is actually that simple. So thank you guys so much for coming in and listening to my story today. I appreciate it, and I hope that it reached you on some sort of level. And I hope that it'll bring some awareness to the fact that this is out there, this is happening, and that this is a very big deal. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much, Katie. At this time, I'd like to invite up to our podium Candace from the Fort Wayne Women's Bureau, who wants to share some local news and information about sexual assault. and also share with us in more detail resources available to individuals. So thanks for being here, Candace.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katie. You did wonderful. A few things, I'm just going to touch on some things that Katie said about resources here in Fort Wayne. The Women's Bureau, it used to be called the Fort Wayne Women's Bureau. We've taken off the Fort Wayne. Hence the name, it says Women's Bureau. That does not mean that we do not help men, because this does affect men. Men can be assaulted, men can be raped, and men need help just as women do. So if you know of a man that needs help, or a young boy, or whatever the case, the Women's Bureau does help men as well. All of our services are free. We have free counseling. We also have free support groups. And there are brochures back at this table that have all of our information. There are also purple cards that I would like everyone to take as you leave today that have resource numbers on there. It's got the Sexual Assault Treatment Center, the Women's Bureau, the police departments. We have a 24-hour rape crisis hotline that's on there. So I ask that everybody take one as you leave today. You may not need it, but someone that you know may. The Sexual Assault Treatment Center here in Fort Wayne is, that's all they do. They work with people that have been sexually assaulted. If you go to get help there, you do not have to report the rape. That's not what they're there for. They're there to make sure that you get medical attention. They're there to make sure that you get set up with other resources that are available. And that information is back there as well. In Indiana, what we do have is called the Jane Doe Law. Before, if you were raped, if you were assaulted, and you went to the hospital or you went to the police station or anything like that, you had to decide right then and there if you were going to report your assault. Not an easy thing to do, which is why most people don't report it. With this law in Indiana, you have 1 year to decide if you would like to report your rape, and prosecution can still happen. So don't let that be an issue. You know, don't let that stop you. You need to get medical attention if you have been assaulted. You need to make sure that your body's okay, your mind is okay. So going to the hospital and going to the Sexual Assault Treatment Center does not mean you have to report it to the cops. It means that that evidence is going to be taken, and it's there for a year. So you have a year to decide. And none of that evidence will go away. So that's very, very important, I think, for people to understand that that's not something that has to be decided right away. IPFW has amazing resources here. You guys have free counseling on campus. The police can be anywhere in a matter of seconds on this campus. So make sure you use those resources. Something that I want you guys to understand, because as Katie did talk about, we've all been in college, and we know that there's drinking that's going on. Underage or above, it happens, and we're aware of that. If you are assaulted while you are drinking or under the influence of drugs, do not let that be a reason that you don't report. IPFW campus, Fort Wayne Police Department are not going to charge the victim for being underage and drinking. We have a great relationship with IPFW's police department and with the Fort Wayne PD, and I know that for a fact, so I'm not just up here saying I want you to report it. It's a fact. So do not let that be a reason that you don't report. If you were out drinking, you're 19, you're 20, and you are assaulted, and you want to report it, don't let that be the reason you don't. I guarantee you that you will not get in trouble in Fort Wayne. Okay, now if you go to Ball State or if you go to Purdue or somewhere like, I can't tell you what they're going to do. But here in Fort Wayne, I can guarantee you that you will not get in trouble. So do not let that be a reason that you don't report. Those are the resources that we have. They're amazing resources. They're out there. Please use them if you need them, or let other people know that they're there. And again, the Women's Bureau helps men. We help women, anybody, children. So make sure that you guys are aware of those resources, and all of that stuff is back there on that back table. And that's all I have. Thank you guys very much for coming so much.
What we'd like to do right now is have a question and answer time period so that you have a chance to ask a question to either Katie or Candace. So we have a handheld mic in Steve's right hand. So anybody have a question that you'd like to ask either Katie or Candace? Or anybody have any comments or thoughts that they might like to share?
I would like, this actually is either for Katie or for Candace. I think there has been, we've talked a great deal about women and people protecting themselves and looking out for friends and things like that. I'd like to hear you guys talk a little bit about the way in which men, who are almost half the campus, can help make this community a safer community.
How can men help make this a safer community? That's kind of a loaded question, I think. But being a bystander, I think, is huge. We all watch things happen every day. We've all watched a fight happen. We've all cheered a fight on, I'm sure. We've all sat back and watched someone be bullied. Those are things that people watch. Don't sit back and watch something like this happen. Whether you see somebody put a date rape drug in someone's drink, or whether you know that someone is feeding somebody drinks for the sole purpose of getting them drunk so they can have sex with them. That is rape. Whether you guys understand that or not, having sex with someone that is drunk and you are not, that is rape. You are committing a crime. And I know that it happens. I know that people get people drunk so they can have sex with them. That is a crime. Don't sit back and watch things like that happen. This is, for men and women. But you're out with your boys and you see them doing this. Are you willing to step in? Are you willing to call out one of your friends for taking advantage of somebody else? It's small things like that that men can do in this community. You cannot be that guy. That's a big one. You can just make sure that you're watching out for your female friends and keeping them safe to the best of your ability.
I was just going to reiterate on the holding your friends accountable. That was one thing after being on a team with 100 men and getting to watch them all interact together. It is huge the way that you guys interact together. So hold each other up. Hold each other responsible for your behavior. It's important.
Other questions, comments? Anybody? Katie, would you want to say anything more about, we do have some student athletes here, which is awesome. Thanks for coming. Anything else as being a member of a team that might be helpful for them to realize and recognize?
I think it's just like any other group of friends that you have, any group of people that you're tightly knit to. And obviously, as a college athlete, majority of the time that you spend is either at school or on the playing field. I think it's really phenomenal, the bonds that you have with your teammates. It's amazing. It actually was my New Mexico teammates who really took care of me after I came forward and spoke out about what happened to me. It was hard for a lot of the guys because for them, a lot of them were uncomfortable. A lot of them couldn't believe that something like this had happened to me, and particularly that it was, their gender that had committed this crime, and for them it was so just completely absurd and out there. But they were really terrific. They actually would come and sleep on my couch the first 2 weeks after I had spoken out publicly. I had different teammates who'd come over and just crash onto the couch and make sure that I was going to be all right for the night, which really was a nice thing. I really think it's just about being there sometimes it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to be saying anything, you don't have to be doing anything, but it's just reaching out, whether it's one of your teammates, whether it's a girlfriend or a friend or anything, reaching out to that person to let them know that you're thinking about them and that you're available if there is anything that they do need. Sometimes just knowing is more important than anything else, just knowing that you have that support. So, you know, I was going to add one more thing too, because I feel like sometimes we stand up here and we sit here and we talk about, oh, you know, if something gets dropped in your drink or this or that, and everything feels like it's so far away, and it doesn't actually feel like it's something that, it feels like it's something that you sit here and listen to all the time. I'm telling you, hey, don't walk in dark places by yourself. That has to be something that you have probably heard 150 times since you started college. And the thing is, though, is that until something actually happens to you, that's when it becomes real. When suddenly something happens and you're like, oh my God, all of that stuff. And I was one of those people who I was, you know, I'd carry around my rape whistle at night and I watched my drinks and do this and do that. And I still was assaulted. So it's really important, I think, to have that awareness that this is out there and happening, and just to be aware that these crimes are happening on campus and that you've got friends who are probably going through some of this, and a lot of them are not telling anybody. That's a huge, huge thing. This is a huge crime of silence. I know I mentioned that I didn't tell anybody about what happened to me for 2 years. I'm incredibly close to my family. I just couldn't bear, though, to possibly talk about it. I just shoved it out and kept it out. So there are a lot of people walking around who probably have had things happen to them, and you just have no idea. So it's always really important to be sensitive and to be open to the fact that this is happening.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. Just talking, sometimes that's the best, is to be a friend as often as you can with your friends and talk about what's on the mind and activities that you're involved in. So we can all make a difference in each other's lives. Any other questions, comments?
I was raped, actually, when I was 15 by my boyfriend. I didn't know that it was rape at the time. I thought we were just making out, and I said no, and he still hurt me. It's still kind of hurt. Sorry. Actually, I joined karate after that for 6 years, and I was a fighter. I won many grand championships against men, and I guess that was my way of dealing with it, was overcoming the whole man versus woman barrier, showing that I can do kind of like what Katie's done, do anything that a man can do. So I did that for 6, 7 years, and I didn't get my black belt, unfortunately. I had to stop because I moved, and it's something I really want to continue with someday. But I was actually molested when I was 10 and raped when I was 15. And I don't know if it's the type of personality that you are that kind of makes you more susceptible to that kind of things.
No, there is nothing that has to do with your personality, nothing that has to do with how you are. I think I constantly question that myself, because there's so much self-blame that goes along with it. But absolutely not. Rape and molestation, these are crimes that span across generations. They span across socioeconomic classes. They do not care what your hair color is, what your major is, how many brothers and sisters you have, if you were quiet, if you were shy, if you like art, if you like sports. It truly is one of those crimes that happens in the poorest communities in the United States and in the richest communities. And sweetheart, it not a thing to do with you. It has to do with the perpetrator and whatever his or her issues are. It doesn't have to do a single thing to do with your personality or anything that you would have done. You did nothing to invite that. That is solely about somebody else making that choice.
Jeannie DiClemente is here from our IPFW psychology department. You've got a couple comments?
Yeah, I'd like
Jeannie?
to comment on that. First of all, Katie, I'm a CU alumnus, and I taught on the Denver campus for 15 years until I moved here in 2001. And I want to echo what you just said, that the onus for the sexual assault is not on the victim. This is all about the perpetrator. You don't bring it on yourself. You don't do anything to cause it. It is all about the perpetrator. So, like you said, it has nothing to do with who you are, what you did, what you wear. 90-year-old women are just as vulnerable to rape as 15-year-old girls. That's not about what she's wearing. That's all about the perpetrator. And I think we cannot emphasize that enough, that it is not your responsibility. It is about the perpetrator.
Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate your thoughts and comments there. Other questions, comments? There's a lady there with her hand up, Steve.
Katie, in the video it showed you hugging your boyfriend. How did you end up telling him, and what was his reaction?
That actually was my college boyfriend from New Mexico, and he was the first guy that I ever told about what had happened to me. And it was after I actually spent a year in Santa Barbara in between CU and New Mexico. I was going to go to a junior college and try to kick there before my entire life kind of crashed in, and I realized that I needed to be dealing with what had happened to me before I stepped back on the football field. And actually, it was a really, it actually wasn't, it was a hard thing to do, but I knew that I needed to let him know up front. At that point, it was just like, all right, you know, I need to let you know about this right now before we get started, before we get into anything. And he was tremendous about it. And we're not dating anymore, but he's been one of my biggest supporters, both athletically and both with choosing to be an advocate on this issue. So, and it's, I know it's hard for anybody who's been through this, the dating part of it. It's just like a whole nother thing to tackle. We could spend another like 3 hours talking about how to handle that. But it gets easier. And sometimes I was talking with another woman who I work with in the movement. We were discussing whether it was easier or harder, because for someone like me, anytime that I start to date someone, it's kind of already out there. I mean, you hit the Google button and everybody knows what happened. So sometimes I don't know if it's better or worse, that I don't have to let somebody know that right away. But you know, eventually, and it affects your relationship, so it's important to be talking about it. And I think one of the most important things is to make sure that you are healthy in yourself and that your relationship with yourself is healthy. And then I think it's actually pretty easy to make it work with someone else. Maybe not all the time. Relationships are never easy, but it's definitely, it's doable to have normal, healthy relationships.
Other questions? Oh, we got one. Leslie, yes.
Yes. Well, I just want to make the point that rape is not a sex crime. It's a crime of violence. And so it doesn't matter how old a person is or how young a person is when they're raped. It's not about having sex with that person. It's about forcing them to submit to your strength and your proclivities.
Thanks, Leslie. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Jeff, if you want to go ahead and pass out the post-event survey, that would be great. We'd love to get your feedback from today's presentation, and it would really be beneficial. Katie, thank you so much for being here today. I hope for all of you here that you heard something that could be usable in your life and maybe could apply to friends, relationships, and continue and definitely think about being an advocate of sexual assault prevention. Be an advocate for sexual assault prevention as often and as regularly, as consistently as you can. So thanks for coming, and we hope to see you again at another health and wellness event.